Aloha. I'm Dan Leaf, your host for Figments, the Power of Imagination. I go by Fig. It's a fighter pilot nickname for my 33 plus years in the Air Force. And I get to host this, my 41st episode in the last 2 years of Figments, the Power of Imagination. Here's the dealio for those of you who are joining for the first time, or maybe those of you who, like me, don't remember what this is about. I want to entertain and inspire, and I do it mostly through friends of mine because they're more inspiring than I am. I had a pretty good life in the Air Force and later in industry and academia and now as a consultant, but the folks I know are awesome. And two of them are going to join me today. I'm going to have a couple of folks who live the life of close air support and combat in a situation we call danger close. I've got CB Long and Guy Gruters with me today for what I think is going to be one of my best episodes of Figments, the Power of Imagination. Okay, so first of all, let me welcome CB Long from Phoenix, Arizona. CB, how are you, man?
I'm fine, Fig.
It's good to see you again. Go ahead.
It's just great weather here. It's a little bit of rain. Just had the Super Bowl here, so just got rid of a big crowd.
Are you a Chiefs fan? I have to give proper homage, right, to the Chiefs.
I don't know.
Or not. Well, that stadium is about a mile from where I live, but it was a cornfield there. Also in good weather, my previous guest, Guy Gruters, the former captain in the Air Force, remarkable story told in an earlier episode that I'd ask you to go back and watch if you didn't see it. Hey, Guy, how are things in Fort Walton Beach?
Excellent. Good weather here, too, believe it or not. So everything's good.
Yeah, and I'm in Hawaii, so all of you folks that aren't in places like that, don't be haters. You know, it's a choice. We chose to live where we live, and we're very blessed by it. So I met CB at a squadron reunion, and through him I met Guy, and we did this other episode, and it gave me a chance to think about something that I experienced in the Air Force, have read a lot about, and care a lot about, and it's a little known part of air combat, and that's the forward air control mission. And I thought a lot about it, experienced a lot about it because I was a OV-10 forward air controller, flying the mighty Bronco airplane in peacetime and training in Korea. And then later, I taught at the U.S. Army Command and General Staff College and pontificated in an article once about the future of close air support. And finally, later in my career, in very different circumstances, as a young one-star, was a F-16 fast forward air controller during the Kosovo conflict. So I understand the extraordinary interface between Air Force and Army when providing direct support to the Army. And talking about it with Guy and CB reminded me that folks don't see this much in movies. It's often an aside, if you will, where a fighter comes in, drops some bombs, changes the situation, and that's it. You don't see the extraordinary ballet that's the art of war of forward air control and the linkage and lash up and connections and coordinations that make all that possible in situations that we call danger close. Danger close means if you get this wrong, you're going to kill friendlies and enemy, or just friendlies. And that's a pretty tough situation. So CB was in the ground side of that because it's not just an airborne forward air controller. And CB, I'd like to talk to you about your entry into the Air Force and becoming what we call a radio operator, maintainer, and driver. We're going to have to explain there's a lot more to it than that. How did you come into the Air Force? Enlist? Why? Were you looking for a skill? What was the deal?
Well, I graduated from high school, and Vietnam was building up, and four of us joined in buddy system, and graduated from high school, joined, and went into the Air Force. And one of us became an electronics man, me. One of us became a security policeman. One of us became an admin, and one of us became a a radio weatherman, whatever it's called,
Mhm.
and we went our separate ways.
So
Uh,
why did you join the Air Force and not the Army, Marines, or Navy? What attracted you
well,
to the Air Force?
I didn't want to get into combat.
How'd
I
that work
wanted to
out? We'll
stay
get
away
to
from
how that worked out.
Vietnam. I didn't want to go into the jungle.
Yeah,
Uh,
but that you
yeah.
did
So
first
this
wind
is
up.
kind of a funny story here now.
Go ahead, CB, because I know you wound up as an instructor in radio maintenance and a lot of radios in the Air Force and all kinds of use. But
Yeah.
you're enjoying an Air Force life on the beach at Keesler Air Force Base in
Oh
Biloxi,
yeah.
Mississippi, when you
Yeah.
got orders to Vietnam. What did you
Yeah.
think about that?
Well, first of all, I got orders to go to a KY8 school, crypto school,
For a
which kind of
secure
led me
radio.
to
Mhm.
not know what I was going to do, but know what I was going to do. This crypto piece of equipment go on a radio jeep. So I didn't know what I was going to do, but I was kind of confused. So I just got my orders and went on my merry way and went home when my mom said, "Oh, you're going to Vietnam," and I said, "Yeah." So that was the first of it. But got over there and got off the airplane and the one of the first pictures you'll show on your screen there was me sitting in a radio jeep at Benoit. Uh, that's me sitting there looking like I'm a radio man. I had no
Wondering
idea
what the
what I
heck
was
you're
getting
doing, right?
into. That was just a Hollywood photograph of me sitting there looking like I knew what I was doing.
So
Uh,
if let me explain a little bit about why that Jeep is there, and that's a Mark 108, I think,
all
right?
right, Mark 108 radio G,
Because
four
I spent
radios,
some
HF, UHF, VHF, and
I
FM. That's
spent some
the hub of the communications that made the whole thing work right there.
a lot of combat power. So how does the whole thing work? Um,
Oh,
let me explain a little bit to
sure.
the viewers that this ground piece of providing air support to U.S. Army forces when engaged in combat. And by the way, nobody does it better than our Air Force over decades. Nobody does it better. And Marines, please feel free to email me and I'll have that argument with you. But nobody does it better, and it requires a sous chef, if you will. And I came up with this comparison because the sous chef is second highest ranking person in the kitchen, and they work directly with the chef to basically set everything up and be able to fulfill the vision of the chef. So the ROMAD and the TACP on the ground work the request from the ground commander for direct support, for close air support, with consideration of when they can get it, what kind of ordnance they need, what kind of airplanes would be suitable. Then they get the airplanes over the battlefield, stack them up in various orbits, and have them ready for the air forward air controller to use it. But if you don't do that that bit of preparation, you're not going to be able to bring the
Right.
right kind of combat power at the right time, right? Do
That's
you
right.
agree with that description, CB?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That was critical to maintain coordination, to keep a clear battlefield, to avoid accidents, to maintain discipline, to maintain coordination between the forward air controller, the direct air support center, the fighters, and the artillery. It was
And if yeah,
maximum discipline.
and if you were doing this in an air show environment, and I've done it, I did some firepower demonstrations for presidents of countries and stuff that are kind of high pressure, but nobody was shooting at me. And so they're doing this unique aerial ballet orchestrated by the sous chef on the ground, the Roman, while people are being shot at, including them. It is remarkable. I have to ask a bit of an aside, CB. Your call sign, I think, from all of the background you provided me, was Ragged Scooper. Your radio call sign is that
That's it.
right?
Ragged Scooper,
Where did
8-4.
that come from?
Well, the Air Force picks them and we just use them.
Yeah, I got stuck on my last combat mission, the F-16. My call sign was Booger, so I know how that could be. So you were Reagan skipper. The Tontos were the facts, and Guy, you were a Tonto fac in the mighty O1 Bird Dog, and we looked at it before, but that's good for the viewers to see that this is a. I'm going to go forward one here and see that the O1 Bird Dog is basically an up-engined Cessna 170. And there's Guy by one because he would occasionally ride in the back seat. He would, or CB by one. He doesn't remember 20-ish or so missions. And then you're playing Guy up on the top, and we've decided that that's the back of you there. Tell me a bit about the O1 as compared to the F-100 that you checked out to fly the beautiful single engine, slick jet fighter. And then there's the Cessna. Tell me about that airplane and
Well,
what you remember of it.
The Cessna, to be fair now, the Cessna moves around, you're generally around 90, 80, 90 miles an hour when you're cruising there. And when you're finding the battle and looking for the battle and everything like that, that's an awfully nice speed to be at. Also, the visibility in that Cessna is outstanding. Out the side, out both sides, and down and out the front. So you really can have a good idea of what's happening down on the ground. Okay. Visibility then much better than the F-100. And since the speed is so low, you're really over the battle area and you really never leave it. You're in a turn all the time so that you're basically, right over where the action is. So from that standpoint, it's outstanding. The bad thing about it is that it's extremely vulnerable to ground fire, of course, right? That's the problem. And other than that, if it wasn't for that, it would be superior to the F-100 for doing a forward air controller job. The F-100 would have a heck of a hard time doing the forward air controller job.
And the having done the different environment, the OB-10 compared to the F-16 is a fast forward air control. They're really different jobs and different capabilities. So, Guy, when you're flying this little Cessna, its only problem is vulnerability to ground fire. Did you spend more time flying it or managing the battle, controlling strikes, looking for friendlies, marking targets with rockets? What was flying kind of second nature for you?
Yes, just like driving a car or driving a fighter. The same thing. I mean, the whole job, the forward air controller job was just like a CB. In other words, you're really on a million different. You're really in a lot of different things, and flying a plane is absolutely not part of it. I mean, flying a plane is just something like breathing. That's just breathing. The switching back and forth between the radios, talking to CB, talking to the people, the guys on the ground, talking to the fighters overhead. Now, these are each required a different radio, so you're switching you're switching your radio for your communication. Each time you're talking to different people, that kind of thing. So it's a lot of thinking in that job.
Yeah, art of war, and in the OB-10, I know we used to, first of all, radios sound different. Fox mic sounds different than the VHF, very high frequency, that sounds different than the HF, that sounds different. Right. So you kind of recognize that, but we'd also in the Bronco adjust our volume. So if we heard something on a certain radio, we'd recognize it as a radio. Part of that, the importance of that, of discriminating between what you were listening to, was that the really important stuff came from the ground commander and and CB and his equivalents on the ground who are in the mix and dealing with whatever the danger close situation is. So you're in the air. Let me recap for the viewers who may or may not be familiar with close air support. Guys in the air over U.S. forces in the jungles of Vietnam at a critical period in the war. I guess it's all critical when it's war. And on the ground is CB getting fighters, getting ordnance ready to support the ground commander. And on the line is not just the lives of friendly forces, but victory or defeat. It's an incredible responsibility that they shared, and they shared those many years ago. So I remember being an executive in the defense industry. It was a great job for a great company, but I had a boss tell me, "Well, Fig, you don't understand. This is really hard." And I thought, from my own military experience, no, not really hard. I have some ideas of what's really hard. But from talking to CB and Guy, I know that there are things that are much harder, much more difficult, much more complex, and much more life and death than what I did. So we'll come back to that in just a minute. But first, let me tell you about the next episode. I think Figments, the Power of Imagination, when I'm going to have a friend on who has his own P-51. He's another friend that I've made through Facebook and through Figments, the Power of Imagination. Imagine owning your own P-51 Mustang. I've got a Mustang, but it's not a P-51. I think you'll really enjoy that, and it will be very much about flying that beautiful airplane. So back to the war. And now I'd like to talk through, and CB and Guy, get as much as we can, the audience, to be in your boots and feel what it's like to have the responsibility of protecting and enabling American soldiers in a pitched battle. Let me go back to the title of this episode, Imagine Owning Danger Close. There are a couple movies out there, Danger Close, one about Afghanistan, one about Australian troops in Vietnam, but they're about that danger close point where the soldier is danger close. And I'll skip ahead to a slide that I've got that shows where we're usually focused in danger close, and they have to. If you're the grunt on the ground, and this is from the Battle of Dak To, the CB and Guy were involved in. Hey, they own it in a personal sense, but owning it in a collective sense with not just one, two, tens of lives at stake, but hundreds of lives at stake for C.V. Long and Guy Gruters as members of the Tactical Air Control Party and the Forward Air Control Team. So, CB, in a battle like this, if I may, you're sitting there, your Mark 108, M61A1 Jeep modified to be a Mark 108. I remember that from ground fact school. And how do you find out that air support is needed? Describe that rubric, please.
Well, first of all, forward air controller is my commander, and he tells me that he needs a certain type of aircraft, a certain type of ordnance. He tells me all of a sudden there's troops in contact. When I hear troops in contact, boy, that gets my back up straight and tells me I need aircraft right away. And
yeah, most of our viewers may know, but what does the term troops in contact mean?
Troop in contact means I got people face to face. They're shooting at each other within meters, and
Right.
they're hot and heavy at each other, and we better get air power to them. And we've got 20 minutes, maybe less, to get ordnance on an airplane, which is probably already on the airplane, sitting at some air base, many miles away, loaded up, pilot sitting in a seat, sweating in the jungle area at Pleiku or some base near Dak To, which is Pleiku mainly. But at that point, we were using aircraft from all over, and that meant aircraft in the air already. We were diverting aircraft, so we had to take ordnance sometimes that weren't necessarily the right ordnance, but were close to the right ordnance. But
So you're a 20-year-old buck sergeant, 3 stripes. Back
right.
they used to call it buck sergeant, and you were supposed to be fixing radios. That's what you came into the Air Force for. Now you are doing this three-dimensional chess game of yourself with yourself of what airplanes do I have? How much fuel do they have? How much time do they
Right.
have? What kind of bombs
I'm
or
over
bullets
target,
do they
right?
have? What
Right.
altitude are they? Are they suitable for this? And how
Right.
desperate is the situation?
Right.
How did you
Exactly.
do that as a 20-year-old?
I don't know. God help me, I guess. I don't know.
Wow. That's why, folks, this is the art of war, and it's a responsibility. Owning this as a young man reminds me, for as a 20-year-old man, so from kind of a half generation ahead of me, it reminds me of an irritant I have, a burr under my saddle about references to the greatest generation. The greatest generation was great, okay, but there's a lot of greatness in all of our American generation. And CP and Guy represent that. And so think about what he was doing as a young airman overhead. And then there's Guy in his O1 with how many rockets did you carry in the mighty Bird Dog? Yeah.
Well, we had some of the earlier ones, so we had 8. Later on, it was 4, but the ones I flew generally had 8 rockets. So we had 8 marking rockets, 8 white phosphorus marking rockets to actually mark targets.
And you have direct contact with the ground commander or the supported ground
Yes,
troops?
we have direct contact with generally the company commander or the battalion commander, but generally it was a company commander, and they generally do
a captain.
a captain. They had company-sized patrols, and he had an artillery observer with him on the ground generally, and sometimes there were artillery observers in the air. But at any rate, the guy I'm talking to is the combat commander of that unit. And the first job was to find out where they were, and this is jungled mountains. So the first job was to get smoke grenades because you couldn't see them, of course. So you'd get smoke grenades coming up through the jungle, and when they'd give you a smoke grenade, you would call the color because these are open frequencies. The North Vietnamese can be on these frequencies. So you would call the color and they'd confirm the color. And now you have the location of your friendlies, and they're going to give you a heading and a distance, their best estimate of distance to the enemy forces, which can be anywhere from, literally 50 yards to a couple hundred yards or whatever. And of course, they're spread out just like the good guys are spread out. But you then have the location of the good guys and the enemy in your mind. You're looking down at jungled mountains. And now what the job is to get the fighters. You're basically interfacing with CB and his people and you get an understanding. They're updating you on what fighters are coming in, when they're going to be there, and what location, on what radial and what TACAN radial and distance are going to be out from Pleiku. So you're looking up there to pick these flights up, and then the fight starts once you get those fighters coming into the area.
And when you control the fighters, you tell them what direction they can attack from to minimize the chance that bombs will go long or short into friendlies. So you try to go parallel. You think about the ordnance they've got. And during their attack, you might call them off, right? You could abort a pass if things don't look right and you think friendlies might be hit.
That's right. And the way we did that was what we do is you basically imagine you're looking down at a jungle environment. You know where the friendlies are, and you know where the enemy are. And so what you're going to do is you're going to set up a heading. What I would always do is set up a heading from literally I'd roll in from about 1,000 feet, and I'd release the rocket at about 400 on the heading that I wanted them on.
Right.
Okay. So my command was always on my heading, Cougar flight, whatever, on my heading, hit my smoke. This way, you're not telling somebody coming on a heading of 275 degrees or 300 or, 80 or whatever. There's too much room for error there. But if you're on the heading that you want them on, now the long and short, and of course you take up the heading, so the long and short are not going to hit friendlies. That's the danger, is the long and short. The left and right is not a real danger. It's the long and short. And so basically then
So-
they simply follow you. And then now as say that as that first bomb or bombs hit, you're controlling the next bombs from those first bombs.
Right.
Lead starts, or the first guys in start with the smoke. But from then on, you're controlling 2, 3, 4, and on it ad infinitum with all the other
fire.
flights from the bombs going on.
Right. So, Guy, I can't help but think and kind of know from my experience that you have relationships both with the folks on the ground and the folks in the air, whether you know them from your Air Force life or not. So, the ground commanders, your call sign, I think, was Tonto 5, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, as a fact, and different, you are known. For some folks that's good, some folks it's not, but you have a credible relationship with ground commanders. You know how they are, as well. You can sense the urgency because you know them, but you also build a sense of what to expect from various fighter units. I remember that from my time as a forward air controller in peacetime. I knew who to trust and who not to trust, and in combat, it must be an even more important relationship.
Yes, I think that's absolutely right. What you're saying, and we had a good reputation. One of the reasons is that CB and the guys did a wonderful job. We had what we needed when we needed it. It just was wonderful. We really had the firepower we needed. Fighters stacked as deep as we needed. We just never had lack of firepower, and so we could really make a difference in those fights. We really could.
In the movies, and we're getting sadly to the end of about half the time I'd like to have, and we'll have chance. We'll talk someday. We're three of us are getting together in person to do this in person, but that ability to affect the battle, but the responsibility that goes with it, I know has stayed with both of you through your lives. And CB, you've seen success and failure, and I know the failure was heartbreaking, and we've talked about it. And
Yes.
And we talked about a specific incident because what you see in movies either is in close air support comes in and fixes everything, or something tragic happens, and sometimes something tragic happens.
Right. A bad day. Bad day.
It's a bad day, but so let me ask you this. Don't you think you saved more lives than we can even imagine?
Definitely.
And created more success than we can even imagine?
Oh, absolutely. It's unimaginable how many more lives we saved than what happened. But so we have to think of it that way, but it still hurts. It just hurts, It's
it can't help but haunt you. But some things haunt you, maybe in a good way. And CB and Guy, thanks. We could go on. I usually get at this point in my Figments episodes to what's your next figment, and I know Guy has the next figment that is the things that haunt you in a good way. You're taking a trip to Vietnam, Guy, in March, back to Vietnam, where you were a prisoner of war.
Yes,
for 5 years and 3 months, I think. Right. And tell me about the event that's going to happen. A unique reunion.
Yes, it's two unique things. Number one, we're gonna be over there on the 14th of March, which was the date that I was released from prison camp. It's going to be an honest 50th year anniversary of that release.
Wow.
But the incredible thing is that one of the Misties, which was the unit I flew with in North Vietnam, set this trip up, and he had good friends because he built literally a lot of schools and libraries for those people in our operational area. And one of his North Vietnamese friends spent 2 days in finding the actual site where we were shot down and captured. And he also found a militia commander who personally saved my life by surrounding me with 11 troops with bayonets drawn and on their rifles that protected me from probably 200 people minimum with machetes that were coming from all directions across the fields to cut me to ribbons. And he literally, at the end, had them lower their rifles, and I believe it was in Vietnamese, but I'm going to find that out when I get over there. He screamed out the command. They didn't stop running in when he had the bayonets lowered at him. Okay. But then he shouted a command, and I think it was the next command is fire, because they did stop. Wow. And then he did another command, and they opened a circle, and we got taken out of there. You know, he took me out of there to a village at 11 o'clock at night. But I mean, the fact is, this guy saved my life. He's 83 years old. He's still alive, and he wants to meet with me. So,
yeah, what a great story. Your enemy who saved your life from other enemies in war in a country that is now not an enemy, but a partner in trying to provide a free and open Indo-Pacific to Vietnam. That's incredible. So what would Fig do, folks, from this lesson? First of all, I'd remind you that we need to achieve our own greatness in whatever generation we're in and not sell ourselves short. Okay? Earth is a tough town. We got things to do, people, so let's do them and not take the easy way out. So anytime we find things difficult, let's seek perspectives like those of Guy Gruters and C.B. Long, and be better, be as good as we need to. So, Figments, Power of Imagination, you can find us and the earlier show, Figments on Reality, both on Think Tech Hawaii, on the YouTube channel there. I'll let you scan that QR code. And speaking of Think Tech Hawaii, what a great company it is, a nonprofit that enables citizen journalists like me to share exceptional stories from exceptional men and women like Guy Gruters and C.B. Long. So thanks for watching Figments, the Power of Imagination, and aloha.
Thank you so much for watching Think Tech Hawaii. If you like what we do, please like us and click the subscribe button on YouTube and the follow button on Vimeo. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and donate to us at thinktechhawaii.com. Mahalo.